$10,000 changes everything. Not because it makes you rich overnight, but because it finally puts you in a different game than the one you've been playing your whole life. Up to that point, money is mostly stress, math, and damage control. After $10,000, it becomes leverage, breathing room, and choices. And if that sounds like an exaggeration, it's probably because you've never actually sat on 5 figures of your own money and watched how differently your brain behaves. Think about how you relate to money right now. When an unexpected bill shows up, does your stomach drop? When you go out to eat with friends, are you low-key doing math in your head before you even open the menu? When your boss sends a quick chat message, do you feel a spike of fear because losing this paycheck would be catastrophic? That's not just about being responsible. That's what it feels like when your entire financial life fits inside a couple of pay periods. Most traditional money advice skips this reality. They go straight to become a millionaire, hit 6 figures, or retire early. That stuff sounds inspiring on paper, but when your checking account is flirting with zero, those goals feel more like fantasy novels than plans. Your brain can't emotionally connect with 1 million when you're sweating a $90 utility bill. There's a gap between where you are and where the advice starts, and nobody talks about the step in between. That step is $10,000. Not a million, not even 50,000. 10,000 of your own dollars, saved and under your control, is the first point where your relationship with money stops being purely about survival and starts being about strategy. It's not glamorous, it's not clickbait sexy, but it's real. And once you understand why everything changes after $10,000, the entire path from zero to financial freedom stops looking like a magical staircase and starts looking like something you can actually climb. Let's be clear about something. $10,000 will not buy you a new life, but it will buy you something even more valuable at this stage: time and options. Imagine for a moment that your car needs a repair that costs $600. If you've got $200 in your account and a maxed-out credit card, that $600 might as well be $6,000. It's panic, borrowing from the future, late fees, and shame. If you've got $10,000 sitting in a savings or investment account, that same $600 is annoying, not life-ruining. Same problem, completely different experience. That difference isn't just about the numbers, it's about your nervous system. When every unexpected expense feels like a threat to your basic stability, your brain defaults to short-term thinking. You say yes to shifts you don't want. You stay in jobs that drain you. You avoid any risk, even the kind that could move you forward, because you can't afford to lose. You make decisions from fear, not from vision. And fear-based decisions rarely build long-term wealth. Now imagine you're sitting on $10,000. You're still not set, but you're no longer hanging off a financial cliff by your fingernails. That job that used to own you, suddenly it doesn't feel quite so powerful. You know that if you absolutely had to, you could walk away and survive for a bit. You could cover a month or 2 of expenses, or take a short break to regroup, or move to a cheaper place if your rent spikes. The job goes from being a lifeline to being a tool. That psychological flip is massive. Here's the weird part. Nothing external has really changed. You still have rent, bills, maybe debt. The economy is the same. Your boss is the same. But you, the version of you sitting on $10,000, is playing a different internal game. You're less reactive and more selective. You're more likely to ask for the raise you deserve because getting fired is no longer an immediate financial death sentence. You're more willing to look at other opportunities because you can afford a period of transition. And when you operate from that posture, people can feel it. Most people never get to this point, not because they're stupid or lazy, but because the early steps of saving feel punishing and pointless. Scraping together your first few $100s doesn't feel life-changing. Even getting to $2,000 can feel underwhelming when you know one emergency could wipe it out. So they give up. They tell themselves they'll save when they make more. But here's the brutal truth. If you can't figure out how to get to $10,000 on the income you have now, a higher income will just scale your problems, not solve them. $10,000 is the first undeniable proof that you can do hard things with money over time. To get there, you had to say no when it would have been easier to say yes. You had to make at least a few choices that your friends didn't understand. You had to resist the constant pull of "I deserve this" marketing and the instant dopamine of small upgrades. You had to look at your own patterns, impulse buying, emotional spending, mindless subscriptions, and decide that future you is worth more than another hit of right now comfort.
That process builds a kind of financial muscle memory. Once you've pushed through the grind of getting to $10,000, saving an extra $1,000 doesn't feel impossible. It feels familiar. You've already proven, to yourself more than anyone, that you can create a gap between what you earn and what you spend. And that gap, the difference between income and lifestyle, is where every good thing in your financial life comes from. Investing, opportunities, freedom, all of it lives in that space. Here's another way to look at it. Below $10,000, almost every dollar you save feels like it has an immediate job. Pay off this card, catch up on that bill, cover that subscription you forgot to cancel. There's always some little fire that needs putting out. Your money is constantly being pulled backward into the past. When you cross $10,000, for the first time, a meaningful chunk of your money is pointed at the future instead of the past. It's not about catching up anymore. It's about getting ahead. That's when you start asking different questions. Instead of "how do I make this month work?" you begin to ask, "what do I want my life to look like 2 years from now?" Instead of "how do I avoid overdrafting?" you think, "where can this money grow the fastest with the least drama?" Instead of "how little can I get by on?" you start asking, "what would it take to actually increase my income?" Those are not millionaire-only questions. They're $10,000 questions. And this is where everything begins to separate. People who never touch that first $10,000 stay stuck in a loop of short-term survival. Solve this month, repeat. People who push through and park that money somewhere safe, even if it takes a while, unlock a new set of options. They can experiment with a side hustle without panicking if it doesn't pay immediately. They can relocate for a better job without being wrecked by the costs of moving. They can say no to toxic clients or bosses because they're not negotiating with an empty wallet. So yes, $1,000 matters. Yes, $2,000 matters, but $10,000 is where the ground under your feet actually feels different. It's where your money finally starts working for you instead of constantly begging you to fix yesterday. And the good news is, you don't need a trust fund, a six-figure salary, or perfect discipline to get there. You just need a clear target, a simple plan, and the willingness to be a little unreasonable about protecting that first 5-figure cushion, even when everything around you is trying to drag it back down to zero. Here's where it gets real. Because hitting $10,000 isn't the finish line. It's the moment when the game finally becomes worth playing. Up to 10 grand, every dollar you save feels like a sacrifice with very little visible payoff. After 10 grand, every dollar you add starts to feel like it actually moves the needle. The emotional math flips from "what's the point?" to "this is working, I'm getting somewhere."
Think about the difference between having $1,000 saved and having $10,000. At $1,000, a single problem can wipe you out. A surprise medical bill, a rent increase, a flight you have to book last minute for family reasons, any one of those can take you right back to zero. You're not really out of danger, you're just slightly further from the edge. At $10,000, you're finally standing a few solid steps back from that cliff. Here's the part people underestimate. Your behavior changes long before your net worth gets huge. With $1,000, you're still scared of opening your banking app. With $10,000, you start checking it with curiosity instead of dread. You're not just looking to see if you survived the month, you're watching a number you care about grow. That tiny shift from avoidance to engagement is where real financial literacy actually begins. Psychologically, $10,000 is the line where you stop being fully controlled by urgency. Below it, the present owns you. Every paycheck is pre-spent. Every decision is, how do I stop today from blowing up? After it, you gain just enough separation from chaos to start thinking like an investor instead of a firefighter. You're no longer judging every choice by, will this ruin me? And can start asking, will this meaningfully move me toward where I want to be? This is also when your money finally starts to feel heavy enough to work. A 10% gain on $500 is $50. Nice, but it disappears into groceries or a single dinner out. A 10% gain on $10,000 is $1,000. That's a month's rent in some places, or a flight and hotel to attend a conference that could change your career, or a serious dent in a high-interest debt. The same percentage, the same basic strategy, but the result actually impacts your life. That's why everything changes even more after you hit $10,000 and keep going. The curve doesn't just rise, it bends. The first 5 figures are all about building stability. The next 5 are about creating momentum. When you go from $10,000 to $20,000, you're stacking stability on top of stability and momentum on top of momentum. You're not just safe from most emergencies, you're now starting to become dangerous in the best possible way. Dangerous meaning you can do things other people can't. Your coworker complains about their job endlessly but can't afford to quit even if a better role would be a short-term pay cut. You, with $15,000 saved, can actually consider it. Your friend gets a brilliant idea for a product but has zero runway to test it properly. You, with your boring little cushion, can afford to spend a few months prototyping on the side, maybe even reducing your hours if it shows promise.
This is where the gap quietly widens. From the outside, nothing dramatic seems to separate you from the people around you. Same city, similar jobs, similar income, but internally, you're living in a different universe. When you have $10,000, then $12,000, then $18,000, risk stops feeling like a death sentence and starts feeling like a calculated move. You can say, if this doesn't work, I'll be annoyed, but I won't be destroyed. Of course, there's a trap here, and you will see it everywhere once you know to look for it. The moment people cross 5 figures for the first time, there's a loud little voice that whispers, "Finally, you deserve to enjoy this." That's when you see the reward purchases, the newer car, the luxe vacation put partly on the card, the upgraded apartment because I can technically afford it. The money shows up and almost immediately evaporates into a slightly shinier version of the same stressed-out life. This is why your mindset after $10,000 matters even more than the number itself. You can treat it like a trophy, proof you've been good and now get to splurge. Or you can treat it like infrastructure, the foundation you build everything else on. One choice leads back to the same cycle you worked so hard to escape. The other leads to a kind of quiet power most people never feel, the knowledge that your life is no longer one bad week away from implosion. Here's a simple mental reframe. Every $10,000 you accumulate is another unit of freedom. At 1 unit, you have basic stability and a little negotiating power. At 2 units, you can take a calculated career risk. At 3 or 4, you can walk away from a toxic situation and not look back. The dollar amount is the same, but your use of it evolves, from defense to flexibility to offense. And remember, the skills you developed getting to the first $10,000 don't disappear. The discipline, the awareness of your spending, the ability to sit with short-term discomfort for long-term gain, that's all still there, ready to be used at a higher level. The difference now is that every good decision has a bigger stage to play on. Cutting $100 of nonsense spending when you've got $200 in the bank just keeps you afloat. Cutting $100 of nonsense spending and adding it to a $10,000 foundation accelerates your trajectory. So if the first part of your financial journey is about clawing your way out of the danger zone, the stage after $10,000 is about deciding who you want to become with the breathing room you've created. Do you want to double down and turn that cushion into true leverage? Or do you want to drift back into autopilot and let lifestyle creep quietly swallow what you've earned?
In the next part, let's get very practical. We'll talk about how to actually get to $10,000 if you're starting from almost nothing, how to move from $10,000 to $20,000 without feeling like you're punishing yourself, and how to use each $10,000 milestone as a deliberate tool to buy time, skills, and opportunities instead of just more stuff. Here's how you actually do it. If you're starting close to zero, $10,000 can feel like a fantasy number. So let's strip out the drama and break it into something your brain can actually hold. $10,000 is just 10 chunks of $1,000. And $1,000 is just 10 chunks of $100. This matters because your brain knows how to find or protect $100 a lot more easily than it knows how to magically get 10 grand. Start with one clear decision. For the next year, your number one financial project is getting to $10,000 and keeping it. Not paying off every dollar of debt, not buying a new car, not keeping up with anyone's lifestyle. $10,000, sitting, protected, non-negotiable. When you give your brain a single, simple target, it can finally stop being scattered and start being creative. Now ask a brutally honest question. Where can I find my first $100 chunks? For most people, they're hiding in 3 places: mindless recurring payments, low-intent purchases, and unused skills. Recurring payments are the subscriptions you forgot about, the gym you haven't seen in months, the apps you don't use but keep just in case. Low-intent purchases are all the small, easy yeses. Takeout because you didn't plan, impulse Amazon buys, the third streaming service. Unused skills are the ways you could earn an extra $50 to $200 this month if you were willing to be a bit uncomfortable. You don't have to become a monk. You just have to decide that right now, for this season, getting that first $10,000 matters more than being on autopilot. Cancel 2 or 3 subscriptions and say, that's $40 a month. Decide to cap random online shopping to once a month and save another $50. Offer to babysit, tutor, design something simple, edit video, help someone move, anything honest that trades a few hours for $100 you otherwise wouldn't have had. Do that a handful of times, and suddenly your first few $100 chunks are real, not theoretical. Here's the key. Make the process visible. Don't just let the money sit mixed in your checking account where it can evaporate. Open a separate high-yield savings account or a conservative investment account and label it something like First 10K or Runway. Every time you move $50, $100, $300 into it, you get a tiny hit of progress. You're watching the number move towards something meaningful, not just less broke. That feedback loop changes how your brain feels about saving. Let's say you find a way to free up or earn an extra $300 a month. Over a year, that's $3,600. Add even a modest, intentional gap in your existing budget, maybe another $300 from saying no a little more often, and now you're at $7,200 a year. Throw in a small tax refund or a bonus you don't immediately upgrade your life with, and suddenly $10,000 in 12 to 18 months is not insane. It's math. Contrast that with what most people do. They tell themselves they'll save what's left over, which almost always ends up being nothing. They wait for a bigger paycheck, assuming higher income will magically produce savings. Then, when that raise or new job comes, lifestyle quietly swallows the difference. Nicer dinners, slightly better apartment, a car that fits the new salary. Their bank balance looks the same in 5 years, but their obligations cost more. Income went up, freedom did not. You are doing the opposite. You are deciding that your life upgrades come after the $10,000, not before. That one decision separates you from the vast majority of people on your street, in your office, in your friend group. They are building a life that looks better on the outside. You are building one that's safer and more powerful on the inside. Now, what happens once you actually get there? This is where you need a rule to protect yourself from your own brain. Remember, the moment you see $10,000 sitting in an account, you will invent 100 emergencies and once-in-a-lifetime opportunities to spend it. A friend's bachelor trip, a car that finally won't break down, a chance to move to a slightly cooler neighborhood. None of these are evil, but if you let them eat your first $10,000, you've just traded your foundation for a handful of experiences and upgrades you could have had later anyway. So set a rule now. The first $10,000 is not to be spent on anything that doesn't preserve or expand your future freedom. That means you absolutely can use part of it to get out under a truly toxic high-interest debt if that's suffocating you. You can use it to move out of a dangerous living situation. You can use a small calculated slice to buy a certification or course that reliably increases your earning power. But you don't use it to signal success, you use it to create more of it. Once you've crossed $10,000 and defended it for a while, moving toward $20,000 becomes less about heroics and more about systems. You've already found many of the easy cuts and quick side hustles. Now you look at bigger levers, your main income and your fixed costs. Can you negotiate a raise based on real value you've created? Can you move to a slightly cheaper place for a year or two and bank the difference? Can you swap the car payment for a reliable used vehicle and send that extra $300 to $500 straight to your freedom units?
This is the contrast most people never see. They think rich people are just good with money. In reality, the people who quietly build wealth are simply willing to make one or two big, boring, unsexy decisions that free up hundreds of dollars a month and then stay consistent. Live slightly below what you can technically afford. Keep your first $10,000 sacred. Point your next ones toward investments instead of decorations. That's it. That's the secret. The beautiful part is you don't need to be perfect. You will mess up. You will have months where you backslide, buy dumb stuff, or feel like you're sprinting in mud. The difference now is that you have a scoreboard that actually matters. As long as your overall direction is more saved, more invested, less frantic, you're winning. Every $1,000 that joins that first $10,000 isn't just another pile of cash. It's more time, more options, more ability to say, no thanks, that doesn't work for me. Here's the real payoff. $10,000 isn't about impressing anybody. It's about never again being completely at the mercy of your next paycheck. It's the line between, I hope nothing goes wrong, and if something goes wrong, I'll handle it. And everything that happens after that number, 12,000, 18,000, 25,000, just keeps widening that gap between you and panic. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need a perfect budget or the world's greatest job or an investing PhD. You just need to be the kind of person who says, I will get to $10,000, I will keep it, and I will use it to buy myself time and options instead of toys and distractions. Because here's the contrast you're really choosing between. In one version of your life, every raise, every bonus, every good month gets instantly converted into nicer stuff and higher fixed costs. 10 years pass and you're still stressed, just with better furniture. In the other version, you pause. You hold the line. You let your first $10,000 sit still long enough to change who you are and how you make decisions. From there, the rest stops looking impossible. Another $1,000 isn't a miracle, it's just the next brick. Another opportunity isn't terrifying, it's a puzzle to run numbers on. You are not waiting to be rescued by a dream job, a rich partner, or a lucky break. You are quietly, steadily building a life where you don't have to ask for permission. So if you're under $10,000 right now, let that number be a promise, not a verdict. If you're already past it, decide what role that money will play, a brief high or the foundation of everything that comes next. Either way, the moment you treat that first 5 figures as sacred, not spendable, is the moment everything really does start to change, even more than you think.